Wind Talkers, also known as the Navajo Code Talkers. They were American Indians who served in the United States Armed Forces in World War II. However, their role in the military was far different from typical American soldiers. They created the only unbreakable code. Other codes, such as the Morse code, sometimes took an hour to get the message across, but this code could be translated in 2.5 minutes. The first code talkers, such as the Choctaw, served in World War I. Yet the most successful and famous code was the Navajo Code used during World War II. 29 Navajo men were recruited by the U.S. Marine Corps in 1942 in order to establish a top-secret code. In fact, it was so classified that they weren't even recognized for their significant role until 1968, which is 23 years after the war ended, since they were sworn to secrecy to never reveal the code.
To defend this U.S. soil, though none of them could...
I and other Navajos who were asked to be code talkers, we went to school, Navajo Code School.
Primarily, I had a backpack radio all the time. And it had a microphone, and it had an ear muff where you can hear in battle. And then you also had a mic in your hand. You had a notebook in your hand with a pencil, ready to write anytime and send a message anytime. It'll sound that way. Set up a box of grenades immediately.
A turtle was considered, and in the code it is named Chetagahi. That's a tank, and all you had to do was name the size of the tank.
Stand up and fight for your land, for your resources, and for your people. And that's the way I took it. So I didn't have any qualms about the fact that we have been not necessarily treated as a citizen of the United States for a long time. At the height of World War II, there were over 400 certified Navajo code talkers, over 400 of us.
The first 29 men that qualified for this task were sent to Camp Elliott in San Diego, California. An enlistment was sent to the Navajo Indians, which clearly stated, Mr. Philip Johnston of Los Angeles recently offered his services to this force to demonstrate the use of Indians for the transmission of messages by telephone and voice radio. His offer was accepted, and the demonstration was held for the commanding general and his staff. The demonstration was interesting and successful. Messages were transmitted and received almost verbatim. In conducting the demonstration, messages were written by a member of the staff and handed to the Indian. He would transmit the messages in his tribal dialect, and the Indian on the other end would write them down in English. The text of messages as written and received are enclosed. The Indians do not have many military terms in their dialect, so it was necessary to give them a few minutes before the demonstration to improvise words for dive bombing, anti-tank gun, etc. Mr. Johnston stated that the Navajo is the only tribe in the United States that has not been infested with German students during the past 20 years. These Germans, studying the various tribal dialects under their guise of art students, anthropologists, etc., have undoubtedly attained a good working knowledge of all tribal dialects except Navajo. For this reason, the Navajo is the only tribe available offering complete security for the type of work under consideration. It is noted in Mr. Johnston's article that the Navajo is the largest tribe but the lowest in literacy. He stated, however, that 1,000, if that many were needed, could be found with the necessary qualifications. It should also be noted that the Navajo tribal dialect is completely unintelligible to all other tribes and all other people, with the possible exception of as many as 20 Americans who have made a study of the dialect. This dialect is thus equivalent to the secret code to the enemy and admirably suited for rapid, secure communication. It is therefore recommended that an effort be made to enlist 200 Navajo Indians for this force. In addition to linguistic qualifications in English and their tribal dialect, they should have the physical qualifications necessary for messengers. Despite tensions between the U.S. and the Navajos, they worked together in war. Many American men still disagreed with this mission they were given because of discrimination. Yet in order for the U.S. to be successful in war, they had to throw out their personal beliefs and pursue their duty in the military. As for the Navajos, some have never been outside the reservation, so they look forward to the new life experiences. Sergeants' duties were to protect the Indians and the Navajo Code at all cost. Basic training was more complex than learning how to march, operate a weapon, or set up a pup tent. It required not only tedious work, but also a loss of one's personal identity by destroying their code of ethics and set of behaviors. The Navajo recruits complained, just like other Marines, about certain roles in their training. For instance, shaving was a requirement that the Navajos disagreed with. It seemed ironic because many were forced to shave non-existent facial hair. Another was the use of the English language being a challenge because of their native language of Navajo. Also, the Navajos felt that eye contact was rude and attempted to not look directly into someone's eyes until they were ordered to do so. Lastly was the tone of voice from the Marine drill instructors. For the Navajos, it was common to raise your voice to demand obedience, but not shout and loudly yell to give orders. Iwo Jima was not the only destination where they served. However, it was the greatest victory against Japan thanks to the Navajo Code Talkers.
Well, I only wanted to fight the Japanese because everybody said they made a sneak attack on the United States. And to protect my people, my land, my country.
It wasn't very difficult for me to learn it. The only thing that I did was to memorize all of it. The message, the coded message, we cannot write it, but we can decipher it. All that code only exists in our mind. When it exists in our mind, we know the code, and we just decode into English. And we just spell it out by English alphabets.
It wasn't until 56 years later where they were recognized for their accomplishments. The Code Talkers were presented the Congressional Medal of Honor by President George W. Bush in 2001. Had it not been for Philip Johnston suggesting to use the Navajo language as a code, none of this would have been possible. Today, their legacy lives on as the men who helped the U.S. win World War II.